Hello and welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt, and this is Vince. And this is going to be a new episode of A Fistful of Questions. I haven't done one of these in a while, and yesterday a viewer sent in a good handful of questions, so this Fistful of Questions video is going to be entirely questions sent in by one person. Alright, so these questions were sent in by someone on Facebook named Isa Sadat, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but he refers to himself as DM Yin. And he's just getting started doing tabletop stuff. Apparently watching my videos and the videos of other people in the brigade sort of inspired him to get started with it. According to his message, he went out and spent almost $1,200 on D&D stuff, which, let me just put that out there to all of my viewers. That is not necessary. You do not need to do that, but if you want to, you can. Really, you just need, whatever core rulebook you're using and some paper and some pencils and some dice. You don't need to spend $1,200, but he did. He's going all out, and that is great that he's found a hobby to spend some money and some time on. So we're going to try to answer his questions and help him out since he is just starting out. So he says that he's just starting out as a DM, and he loves doing it because he already has great mentoring skills, listening skills, and making creative plots, which are very good skills to have as a DM, of course. And he sent in 4 questions, so we're just going to go down the line and answer those 4 questions, and hopefully his questions will help some other people out who maybe are just starting to DM. His first question for me is, what loop sounds or soundtracks, sound effects do you use, and can you share some? Yeah, I've talked about this a lot in my videos, about how I like to use immersion-enhancing things like sound loops, sound effects, and quiet music to enhance certain scenarios. Cat hair. In terms of specifically what I use for sound effects and sound loops, Google is your friend. Do a search for free sound loops or free sound effects, and you'll come up with a lot of great Creative Commons public domain websites that specialize in sound effects and loops. And if you have any sort of knowledge of audio editing, even just the bare minimum, you can use programs like Audacity to then put those loops together, mess with the levels, add certain filters and things like that to really make some cool sort of immersion-enhancing sound loops. In terms of music, I turn to video game soundtracks for the most part. I find that if you use something that is instantly recognizable to your players, it's going to take them right out of the moment because they're going to associate that music with that movie or that TV show or whatever. So say you have a battle and you want to play the music from the Bridge of Khazad-dûm sequence from The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Instantly your players are going to be thinking goblins, Balrog, Gandalf on the bridge. It's going to take them right out of the moment. But if you play something a little bit less known, like some video game music that your players haven't necessarily heard before, it can really add a lot. So I turn to video games like Neverwinter Nights, Baldur's Gate, the Elder Scrolls series. The composer Jeremy Soule does really, really great sort of understated music for video games. And I have almost all of the video games that he's done. He did Neverwinter Nights, Dungeon Siege, all of the Elder Scrolls games since Morrowind, and there's some really great music in there. And what I've done is I've just gone through my iTunes and I've set up playlists, and the playlists are things like Exploration Outside, Exploration Interior, Dungeon, Town, Tavern, Minor Battle, Major Battle, Puzzle Solving. I just have all these playlists of music that I think is appropriate for those scenarios. And so when I'm DMing, I just have my iPod sort of off to the side, and I have it hooked up to some speakers behind me. And I'll just sort of, as I'm narrating or as the players are doing something, I'll just reach over and very quickly scroll to a good playlist, click it, and then just forget it. You don't want something to distract you or your players at the table, but if you can do it without drawing attention to it, it really adds a lot. So yeah, that's sort of my tips with using music and sound effects. Definitely, it should never override the plot, and it should never be a crutch. It should only be used to enhance your play style. His next question is, are we as a DM allowed to show specific details of the enemy, such as strength, reflex saves, HP, and such to the PCs? How much can we give? Well, you as a DM are allowed to do whatever you want. However, I would suggest not doing that. Those stats, those abilities, are what we call the metagame. They're what is happening underneath the surface of the game. There are ways to tell your players things about the monster's stats without saying boring things like, his AC is 15. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to illustrate to your player that he barely missed. Instead of saying, you rolled a 14 and his AC is 15, so you barely miss. Your player rolls a 14. He says, I roll 14 to hit. Or, you know, I strike with my sword and I roll with a 14. And you say, you hit him, you strike a good blow, but your blade glances off of the chainmail that he's wearing. This is both thematic, it's cinematic, it's a cool way to describe it, and it also tells your players that they are close to hitting it. Like they were, oh, so close. So, without sort of just coming out and saying his AC is 15, you're saying you're almost there. Another way to do this is HP. Let's say you want to illustrate to your players that the monster's HP is getting low. You can say things like, as you're fighting, you see that the goblin is fighting a little bit more sluggishly. He's actually dragging his left foot, and there's blood sort of pooling beneath him. He's looking like he's on his last leg, and he's fighting in desperation at this point. This informs your players that he's almost a goner, and they can decide what to do from there, whether they want to go ahead and kill him or try to take him captive or whatever. So I would shy away from using the stats as a way to inform your players about monsters. Try to do it in a more creative, thematic way. The metagame should never sort of leach into the actual gameplay. His next question is, how many times in a month is normal to play a 5 to 7 hour session? Twice a month, or does it depend? I personally think two times a month is the minimum, since PCs can forget or lose interest in the plot. I would agree that twice a month is a good benchmark, but it really depends on your group and their scheduling. People can be busy, especially if they work full-time, and sometimes it's hard to find times that people can all get together. Here's what I would say. Game when you can. If you can game twice a week, game twice a week. And if you can game twice a week without getting burned out and hate each other, then game twice a week. If you can only get together once every 2 months, get together once every 2 months. You have to take what you can get and work around that. Yes, twice a month is ideal because players, it's shortly after the previous session, they remember what's going on, they're still invested in the plot, but you can't always do that. So be willing to work around people's schedules. Also a good way to get players back after a long break, just recap what's been going on. Take really good notes as a GM, and at the beginning of the session, just recap what's been happening, all the way from the beginning up to now. Even just, gloss over it. Mention important NPCs, plot hooks, quest item, things like that. Give it, almost like a previously on Battlestar Galactica, like that type of thing. Just what's been happening up to this point, to give your players a refresher and make sure they remember what their motivations are. His final question is, where can we get an interesting room puzzle? Do you have some of your own, and can you share? I actually am going to be doing a series on puzzles, but I'm not sure when that's going to be happening. So for now, I'll point you towards some other channels that do a great job with this. There's D&D Puzzle of the Week. There's Dungeon Master Johnny. There's lots of other channels out there that have their own puzzle ideas. But what can I tell you generally about creating puzzles? Simplicity is key. Do not make a puzzle that you yourself would have a problem solving. Do not make it too complex, because it's one thing to walk into a room and have a puzzle laid out before you, but D&D is, it's a lot of theater of the mind. Not necessarily the players aren't going to be seeing the same thing that you're describing. So you have to make sure that you keep things simple, but also make sure that you're straining their brain a little bit. Riddles are good. If you can work wordplay into the puzzle. Here's an example. I had a dungeon that was a former temple to a god. and all the puzzles were related to this god's, like, virtues, his doctrines. So they went into this room that had this massive scale, like a four-sided scale, and they were all balanced. And they had things like weapons, gold, you know, just like food on there, you know. And it was like, the puzzle was like, the god admires warfare only half as much as he admires virtue, but twice as much as he admires wealth. And so they were like, it's math. They have to go, okay, so so we need half as much weapons as we need, you know, these virtuous items, but the weapons have to be twice as much as the gold, you know. And so it's like, they have to think about this, but it's simple enough, and it just takes a little bit of time of working through. So that's what I would tell you about puzzles, is keep it simple. And actually, you know what? The biggest piece of advice I can give a new DM is keep it simple. Do not try to do this grandiose thing when you're first starting out. Just simple plots, simple motivations, characters with believable, logical motivations. You know, dungeon delving. It's okay to start out simple, because I guarantee you're going to have fun, whether or not it's just delving into a dungeon to steal the loot of a dragon, or if you're trying to, you know, lead a rebellion against a oppressive, you know, totalitarian regime. It's all sorts of fun, and when you're first starting out, you will thank yourself if you just keep things simple as possible. Simple and fun. So that's going to be the end of this video. DM me in. I really appreciate the questions, and I really appreciate the kind words in the message as well. It's really encouraging to hear that my videos are helping people get started in this hobby that I love so much. That is why I do this. That is why I make these videos, is to help people out and get people into the hobby. I think that's why we all do this. So thank you, DM me in, and be sure and send me any follow-up questions you have. I don't know if I'll do a video follow-up, but I will definitely answer any questions. And if anyone has any questions whatsoever, feel free to send them to me. The easiest way to get a hold of me is actually on the Fistful of Dice Facebook page, which is facebook.com/afistfulofdice, or you can private message me on YouTube, and I will most certainly get back to you. Alright guys, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope everyone's having a great week. Happy gaming all, and take care.